want me to get it?
No.
Because I can get it.
Fuck you, Ian. Hey everyone, James Reeves, TFBTV. I'm here with my good friend Ian McCollum. You know Ian, he's an actual gun professional. Unlike us here at Half-Ass Operation, we have TFBTV. We're here in Prague in the Czech Republic. So I thought that it would be appropriate to do the top 5 Czech firearms. I can name maybe 5 Czech firearms. Ian, on the other hand, living human gun encyclopedia. He's gonna walk us through chronologically.
Yes.
Don't misinterpret it. We are here for Czech combat.
Yes.
By being put on by CZ. Thank you for having us, CZ and SMB and all our Czech buddies. I have not done, you know, you're a veteran of the LARP wars.
I've done a lot of brutality matches. Czech combat is CZ's first go at a tactically oriented major shooting competition. I'm really excited to see what they do with it.
Now let's get right into it, Ian. Tell me about the number 5, which I guess would be deductively the oldest. The oldest Czech firearm.
So if we're looking at, well, this is 5 most influential, most important, substantial Czech firearms, because Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, is a country that has a tremendous history. It's a relatively short history. We're only talking about 100 years since this was the kingdom. Oh boy, let's see if I can get this right with 2 glasses of wine and not noting it down. The kingdom of the Croats, Slovene. No, that was Yugoslavia. Never mind. So the Czech Republic.
Close enough. You could have kept going, and no one would have known the difference except for people who lived here. But anyways,
a fascinating history of small arms innovation and development. Small country, but really brilliant engineers here. So the number 1 we're going to go with is the VZ24, which is a Mauser. And it's not mechanically distinct from any other Mauser. It is a licensed copy of the Mauser Model 98.
Okay.
And I think what makes this really significant is it was the first really mass-produced gun in Czechoslovakia. The factory here was set up with assistance from Mauser. They sent down some guys, set up the factory at CZ, and you end up with one of the major sales competitors to Mauser. So Mausers are being made in a number of places. They're being made in Germany, they're being made in Belgium by FN, they're being made here in Czechoslovakia by CZ.
How does the Czech version stack up to the other, I guess, clones or licensed copies?
Licensed copies?
Yeah.
It is on par with all of them.
Okay.
They're excellent guns, high quality manufacture, high quality materials.
What caliber are we talking?
Typically 8mm Mauser.
Okay.
Yeah.
And could I ever get one of these in the U.S.?
Oh, absolutely.
With the CZ versions?
Yep, VZ24s. So for Czechoslovakia, where we use M, we would say like the M24 thing. They say VZ, which is short for Vizor, which is model or year.
Got it. Okay.
The Czech military adopted these, and the Romanians adopted them or bought them. Bunch of countries, it is actually pretty easy to get a VZ24 Mauser in the US.
How expensive are they though? Is it one of those things where it's like you saw a flood of surplus like 20 years ago and you can get them for like $79 each and now they're $400?
Yeah, pretty much.
Did I just nail that?
Yeah.
Number-wise?
There are some really exotic, rare, small versions, but if you want a generalized VZ24 Mauser, it's going to be as easy as finding any other sort of generic, you know, there aren't a whole lot of people who are all in for collecting the Czech guns or the Romanian guns. It's not like German or American.
Do you own one?
I do, actually. I have.
He had to think about it. Ian's got so many old-ass guns in his vault. He's like, ugh.
I got it a very long time ago, and I had to think about whether I still had it, and I do. I actually have a VZ 1923 dated one, I believe.
Okay.
It's the,
holy shit.
the longer barrel length. Well, sort of closer to a Gewehr 98 than a 98K. You know, they start making them in 1923, I believe, and they're one of those, like after World War I, a lot of countries are looking to rearm and re-equip, and especially sort of the third tier of countries outside of the United States and Western Europe. So you have a lot of South American countries, and they will all, the bidding and the commercial fighting goes on between Mauser and Oberndorf and the Czech, the VZ24 of Czechoslovakia, and the FN Mausers.
This is a bolt action. Very simple, straightforward bolt action rifle. Probably
Really
inexpensive to produce.
Yep. The variations in them basically consist of, you know, a few different barrel lengths. Do you want the sling swivels here or there? Do you want the sling swivel on the bottom of the stock or on the side of the stock? What version of, not even really what version of sights, they're all kind of the same. Like, do you want the front sight protector? what version of rear handguard do you want? They're all, outside of collector nuance, they're basically all identical. What I think makes them relevant and puts them into a list like this is Czechoslovakia coming out of the gate with a high quality gun. They're going to make a lot of them, and they're on the map. Interestingly, little side note, the engineer that Mauser sends down here to help them set up the factory was a guy named Josef Nickel, who had his own pistol design that didn't really go over that well at Mauser, and it becomes the CZ24 pistol.
Okay, that is very interesting, and it's just Ian doing Ian things, dropping knowledge on us here at TFBTV. I don't even know what were we talking about, the CZ24?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure I got the number right, because you start talking, I'm like, ah.
The 24 was the rotating barrel version, and the 27 was the simplified plain blowback version.
Are you making that up? This is the pistol.
Yes.
Okay, I was about to say, hold on, there's a bolt action with the rotating barrel. I'm like, yeah, the wine's hitting me a little bit harder than I expected, Ian.
He may not know guns that well, but we all really appreciate him coming over here to make sure the Europeans recognize that in America, we always dress like we're at the gym.
God damn it, Ian. Next. We started with, what, 1924? Is that why it's the VZ24?
Yeah.
I guess figure it's a little bit like Zastava, right? So 1924, and we're moving to...
Well, let's move to 1929.
Okay, not very far.
I've got one that's actually kind of an intermediate. Kind of depends how you judge the date. But we're going to go 1929 first. My number 2 gun here is going to be the ZH-29.
Okay, I don't even know what that is.
Designed by a guy named Holek. And this is the most successful of a whole smorgasbord of Czech experimentation into semi-auto rifles. So the ZH-29 is this, I really think, ahead of its time, self-loading rifle, 10-round detachable mags, chambered for 8 Mauser, and it has a side tilting bolt. So the bizarre looking thing about this is if you look at the top of it, the sights are aligned with the barrel, and the receiver is not aligned with the barrel.
Interesting.
It's like, it's kind of bent.
Was that like a delay device or?
So you think of all of the downward tilting bolts that we have.
Right.
It's the same mechanism. They just tilted it to the side instead of to the bottom. So you leave space for your trigger mechanism. Your bolt's not getting in the way of that.
Okay.
You don't have, the other thing here is with a vertically tilting bolt, the position of the bolt is changing relative to the cartridge at the top of the magazine. So you have to work that into your feed mechanism. Well, if the bolt stays in the same vertical plane and it just tilts side to side, simplifies the magazine.
Sure.
And the ZH-29 was tested by everybody who was testing self-loading rifles. So the US tested it, like all the major European powers tested it, and it just never quite won the prize.
Why? It looked weird. It was like it had this.
A lot of these countries were testing self-loading rifles, but they weren't actually ready to buy one. They wanted to see what was out there. Maybe, like, what can we maybe just steal, design ourselves?
Yeah, sure.
The U.S. actually was was in the market for a rifle, but not for another 10 years afterward.
Right.
And so we end up with Garand, who's working for the government. So like, ooh, hey, no royalties. That's kind of nice.
Right.
We make it ourselves. We build ourselves. There were a couple of contracts. You would never in 1,000 years guess randomly the countries that actually purchased ZH-29, and there were a couple subsequent models. The Chinese purchased them, and Abyssinia purchased the ZH-29. Abyssinia, better known today as Ethiopia.
The only thing I know about Abyssinia are Abyssinian cats.
What really appeals to me about the ZH-29 is I had the chance to actually shoot one at one point. They're out there. You can get them in the US, but they're definitely into the 5 figures. They're very expensive guns because there aren't that many. It just feels like a modern proper rifle from the 20s.
Ian, that's what I want to ask is how the hell is this on a top 5? Like this seems like a footnote in Czech guns.
The reason I put it in there is the Czechs were doing a tremendous amount of development and experimentation. And the ZH-29 came the closest, but just in general, the world wasn't quite ready for standard issue semi-auto rifles in the 1920s and early 30s.
Is it safe to say that you put this in the top 5 simply for the sake of the Czechs getting freaky with guns?
Maybe.
I figured. What was the engineer's name?
Holek.
Do you think his friends called him the Incredible Holek? Next.
They would today.
So for number 4, Ian, we only moved up 5 years. And if we're only going to move 5 years with every subsequent number, we are never going to get to a gun that I know what it is. So this better be a big leap.
No, we're actually going backwards. The good news is all the communist era stuff was kind of crap. So we're going to skip most of that. So you'll know this one. Number 3 is the Bren.
Okay.
You've probably heard of the Bren.
Yes, I'm
Bernal,
familiar.
Enfield. Now, the Bren gun starts as a light machine gun designed in Czechoslovakia in 1920. Well, the first one's in 23. Its first final design in 1926. So the ZB26. It is adopted by a bunch of different countries, and the British take an interest in it. In the early 30s, the British work on it. They adapt it to 303 with the help of CZ engineers, and it becomes the Bren gun, which is the best light machine gun of World War II. The ZB26 is this perfect, like to me, it's a very mature iteration of a magazine-fed light machine gun, which is a category of gun that we essentially see in World War II and nowhere else. They're still around in a few places in other conflicts. You know, the U.S. still uses the BAR, of course, after and before, but generally speaking, by the end of World War II, most countries have looked at machine guns and they've adopted the German model of the universal or general purpose machine gun, belt-fed on a bipod. Where World War I, we have automatic rifles like the Shosha and the BAR, and we have heavy machine guns that are water-cooled. And the ZB26 is this perfect implementation of the middle ground. It's a bipod mounted. It's a gun that can be run by one man, typically a 2-person team, just to make it more efficient, to keep it fed reliably. But it's a one-man gun if you need it to be a support weapon. And the British put it to such fantastic use as the Bren. Now, there's the ZB26, there's the ZB30, there's the ZB30J. They're adopted by a bunch of, again, sort of the smaller powers. The Czechs do a lot of sales to countries that do not have their own arms industry. So there aren't a lot of Czech guns sold to the US because we make our stuff. There aren't a lot of Czech guns sold to the Germans because they have their own firearms industry. Although the SS in World War II, not being part of the general German army supply chain, they end up using a lot of Czech stuff that they capture when Germany occupies Czechoslovakia.
Interesting,
but,
yeah, makes sense.
When you get countries like Romania that doesn't have a lot of domestic industry, Yugoslavia, which had Zastava, but when we're at this point in time, they didn't have a lot of light machine gun development. Spain buys ZB26s. A lot of countries buy moderate numbers of these guns and make them very common in the world stage.
Are they being exported from Czechoslovakia, or are they being manufactured under license in factories in these countries where they're being sold?
Mostly exported. The Romanians will build them under license at Kujir.
No shit. Okay. Yeah.
Most of the time, the Chinese, by the way, buy a lot of them and make them as well. During the warlord era, we have ZB26s both imported and produced in China. And then, like I said, the British turned it into the Bren. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that the Bren gun is truly a Czechoslovakian design. That's just the Brits.
I didn't.
Yeah, the Brits make a few changes. They change it to 303 British caliber, their own caliber, and they make a few tweaks, and then they just build the bejesus out of it themselves.
Have you shot a Bren, Ian?
I have. I've shot Brens and ZB26s both.
So is it safe to say that you've Bren there?
Oh God.
Done that?
I'm gonna need more
Dude,
wine.
yeah, I need more wine too. We're out. This charcuterie is good.
Right, we are ready for more now.
Cheers. Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm recharged. We are here on Archer's Island in Prague, having a wonderful time. We have a wine festival going on behind us. It's very romantic. I'm enjoying myself.
So World War II, Czechoslovakia is occupied by Germany. Like, they make some cool stuff. There's some notable stuff, but none of it that really is long-term impressionable.
Right.
1950s, you've got communism takes over Czechoslovakia. Not a great thing usually. There's sort of this general rule that Czech firearms are outstanding, and the VZ52 in particular, of all the early Czech communist era guns.
Great pick. I love the VZ52.
Awesome. It is the one that proves the rule by being the counterfactual. The VZ52 is kind of terrible. In fact, interesting little side note here, VZ52 is terrible enough that the decree officially adopting it also officially orders the development of its replacement.
That's funny because to me, I actually really did think it was kind of cool. What, it's roller delayed, right?
Roller locked.
Yeah, roller locked. And it uses the 7.62-25
Tokarev cartridge.
Right, which it was like an early 5.7. I thought it was kind of neat, but it was
awesome.
shit.
And only sometimes does it accidentally fire when you hit the decocker, and only sometimes if you put hot ammo in it does it explode.
I mean, let's be honest. It isn't like half the guns that are out today. Maybe some that have been adopted by the U.S. military don't do that, right?
We're going to skip forward a couple of decades to get to one that I'm pretty sure you've heard of. It's the CZ75. You aware of that
Love the
one?
CZ75. We actually did a torture test last time we were here. We treated it like shit, stomped in it with the new 511 Stash shoes coming out Q4 2024. I was impressed. Continue.
And it's a pistol that was developed like 50 years ago nearly. Still around, it's got to be one of CZ's most popular best-selling guns. I don't know what their actual sales numbers are, but the CZ75 in its current competition iterations it's like the equivalent of the 1911 or the 2011 in the United States. It is the de facto default pistol for IPSC competition in Europe.
Interestingly, Ian, and you know this, I'm sure, we talked the last time we were here, we talked to one of the engineers, the original engineers on the CZ75 project. They brought it to, it was Madrid, I think, or Barcelona. They brought it to an arms expo in Spain. And basically it got ripped off by everybody and they made no royalties on it.
So it's a pistol that doesn't have a lot of specific innovations that you can point to. It's like the CZ75 was not the first pistol to do...
I mean, it had the inverted rail, right?
Yeah, it has that. Yeah. It's not the first one to do it.
Okay, I did not know that.
But ultimately the CZ75 is just such a fantastic accomplishment of engineering, putting together known good elements from other guns into a platform that is still fantastic.
Who makes, other than CZ, and maybe not other than CZ, who makes the best CZ75 based? I mean, you have Tanfolio, you have Sphinx, if you remember
my
which of them.
guess would, having not looked into it in detail, my guess would be Sphinx.
Yeah,
because they're Swiss.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to top the Czechs for quality? Not going to be a whole lot of people other than the Swiss. CZ75, weirdly, is a gun I have not done any substantial video on for Forgotten Weapons. I know, I keep meaning to. Last time I was here at CZ, I wanted to do it right, and I didn't quite have all my ducks in a row for it, so I put it off.
That's funny.
There will be a fantastic CZ75 series on Forgotten Weapons, but I'm not sure when.
If you held a CZ75 to my head and asked me, James, what gun has Ian not done a video of? I would have been like, well, he definitely did one on this. All right, well, I can't wait to hear what the number one is. CZ75 I thought was going to be the number one. Not, again, we're doing this chronologically. Not only is there an argument for it being their best gun, I think it might be their number one gun, but also I just thought, you being Ian McCollum, we were going to stop in the 70s. But apparently we've got one more past that.
I have occasionally managed to put my hands on a modern gun, believe it or not.
Well, let's change some scenery and find out what that is. Number one. I'm really excited to hear this, Ian.
Have you not figured out what this one's going
to
be?
Well, yeah, no, I have a pretty good idea, but what I do want to say, Ian, is thank you for doing this. Again, it's always a treat having you on the program, on our little program, compared to Forgotten Weapons, but I was having the shittiest day. We were supposed to film a bunch of content with CZ today, and a bunch of logistical issues happened, and we didn't get to film anything today at all. And then Ian texts me, says, hey, I heard you were in Prague.
Let's go drink wine and
yeah,
talk
let's
about
go.
guns.
Yeah, and this ended up going from a really shitty day to, so personally speaking, this is really a treat for me.
My pleasure.
Speaking of treats, I can't wait to hear this number. It's going to be the Bren.
I mean, we already did the Bren 1. So.
Yeah, I would say it would have to be the 3.
So it's the 2 or 3. There's not a huge amount of change, there's nothing revolutionary changed from the 2 to the 3. But to me, the number one gun here, not by quality or by importance, but by chronology. The most recent, substantial, influential Czech gun is the Bren 2. and its iterations.
Sure.
And the reason that I say that is it shows CZ continuing to be relevant to the modern marketplace and continuing to develop. They could have done an AR, but the Bren 2 has been a remarkably successful, by most standards, quite recent modern combat rifle. We see it adopted by the Czech military, which is I don't want to say it's a gimme for CZ, but it's kind of a gimme for CZ. The Czechs will adopt whatever CZ makes. But I believe the Hungarians also adopted it.
GIGN.
GIGN has purchased them in limited numbers. They're a small organization. Like, it's a gun that has gotten multinational European adoption. There are a lot of them in Ukraine. The Ukrainians seem very happy with them from all reports that I've seen. And that means something. Like, it's one thing to sell it to, the Czech military in 2018, and they're like, yeah, it's a great gun. It did everything we needed. Well, you didn't do anything with it.
I'm excited because this is the only time I can substantively contribute to this discussion. And all the things you're saying are like, it's things where I agree with you completely, and I just want to be able to chip in here on this one because the last time we were here, we got to look at a prototype of the Bren 3. We got to see the Bren 2 PPS, which will shoot sub-MOA. We did it. Sub-MOA with regular D-linked machine gun ammo. So again, you're talking about when you have piston-operated systems, they're not known for their accuracy, simply because you have a reciprocating mass and barrel acoustics and so on and so forth. But the PPS does it very well. And then with the Bren 3, they're looking at feedback from operators, and this is back when we were looking at the prototype of the Bren 3, where they're saying, look, we can't even talk about really the Bren 2 being used. So you guys aren't going to be able to make this video for a long time. And that's what we were supposed to shoot today was the Bren 3. What they did is they took all of that operator feedback from the Bren 2 and they integrated it into the Bren 3. One of the big ones that stands out, they replaced the plastic hardware, the locking hardware for the stock with metal hardware. Okay. Interesting point of failure, right? Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. So that's actually a big thing. We're looking at a true next generation platform where they are doing, like, say, the MCX, when you think about the MCX, which has all of the wear components are replaceable. So you don't have to, if that's an issue for you changing the receiver, whatever, you've got the rails in the inside of the receiver. Those are replaceable. You've got ejectors, extractors, anything that's a wear component. It's hardened steel and it's replaceable. So I am super, super stoked, in case you can't tell.
I am getting that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited about this gun because we trashed the Bren 2 just like we did the CZ75. We even shot 300 blackout through a 5.56 Bren 2, and it shot clear and the gun was still operable.
Wow.
So
nice.
I'll stop, Ian. Thank you for allowing me to interject. Because this one's really about you. It's like I'm picking your brain.
I mean, it's the third generation now of a weapon system. The first generations always have issues, no matter who's making it, no matter what the gun is. The first M16s had issues. The first AK was so bad it took them 9 years to figure out how to stamp a receiver.
And it's funny because it's still so bad. I'm kidding. I love picking on my AK people.
The VHS 1, the Bren 1, the Bren 805. Need a little bit of
I never even handled one.
They seemed pretty cool at the time. You look at them now, you're like, yeah, there was some work to be done on that. And then they get the Bren 2, which is like the 95% of the way there. And then having the opportunity to actually put it into real life combat use and iterate it based on actual combat feedback, that's what gives you really effective, good guns. That's what made the M16 so good, was actual combat feedback on it.
Sure.
And the same thing with all the other guns that have become iconic, long-standing military rifles. So I think it's very impressive for CZ to still be in that role today.
Turns out, whenever you take feedback from people who actually use the gun and you integrate it, it improves it. Turns out. It's a weird concept.
And there are a lot of guns you can't really hold that against them because there haven't been a lot of wars. Guns developed 10 years ago, other than Ukraine, where was it going to get used, where you could actually find out what's going to break, what's going to not work in the heat of actual use.
Ian, thank you so much for integrating a gun into the top 5 that I could speak intelligently, quasi-intelligently about. And as intelligently as James Reeves can speak about it. Two, thank you for salvaging my day.
You're welcome.
And guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of TFBTV. Cheers, Ian. Cheers, guys. Take care.